Considering how long Spider-Man has been a character, it's not surprising that he has had quite a few love interests. Ranging from flings to long-term romances, Peter Parker has dated a lot of interesting women. That's why TheBinger decided to rank them all so we can determine who was Spider-Man's best girlfriend. Number 10. Captain Marvel. That's right, you weren't just projecting during that one scene in Avengers Endgame when Captain Marvel and Spider-Man meet. The two actually have a romantic history in the comics. Carol Danvers, going under the name Ms. Marvel at the time, went on a date with Peter Parker in the 47th issue of the Ms. Marvel series of the comics. Here, Danvers treats the hapless and perpetually broke Peter Parker to an upscale meal before getting interrupted by some thugs with a grudge against Carol. After defeating the bad guys, the two end up hanging out for a while and eat a few chili dogs while overlooking the city. Even if this date wasn't overly romantic, it was still important to both of the characters. At the time, Carol was unable to use her powers, and Peter was able to offer advice from his first-hand experience with that problem. Similarly, Peter Parker is always kind of in need of a pick-me-up. A fancy night out with someone he can relate to did wonders to lift his spirits and continue to juggle his many responsibilities. Even if it was a short romance that only served to bring each character out of their respective funk, it was a sweet relationship that improved both of their lives. Number 9. Debra Whitman. Peter Parker started dating Debra Whitman after she started working as a secretary for the Empire State University's Department of Biophysics. While the two did have some chemistry, Peter's secret responsibilities as Spider-Man put a strain on their relationship. Peter's unavailability and Debra's previously abusive relationship led her to hallucinate that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Even though she was right in thinking this, those around her assured her that the seemingly average Peter Parker couldn't be Spider-Man. Eventually, she convinced herself that Peter couldn't be Spider-Man when he put on a Spider-Man costume and didn't match her expectations for the superhero. She would return, though, after Peter announced to the world that he was Spider-Man. She wrote a book about her relationship with Peter that was edited into more of a hit piece against him. Eventually, though, she would go against her editors and attest to the quality of Peter Parker's moral fiber. Peter's relationship with Debra isn't super important in the grand scheme of the Spider-Man comics, but it does establish how much being a hero affects Peter's life. He could have had a happy relationship with Debra, but being Spider-Man kept getting in the way of that. This theme of sacrificing his personal happiness for the good of others is a central part of Peter Parker's character, and this relationship reinforces that. Number 8. Liz Allen. Liz Allen is one of the original Spider-Man characters, appearing in the very first issue of the Amazing Spider-Man comics. At the start of the series, she's Flash Thompson's girlfriend and treats Peter as poorly as everyone else does. Of course, being a helpless high schooler, Peter still can't help but have a crush on Liz. Eventually, Liz comes around and starts having romantic feelings for Peter, but by that point, Peter is no longer attracted to her. Instead, she ends up marrying Harry Osborn. When Harry's evil activities as the Green Goblin finally catch up with him, though, Liz grows to hate Spider-Man and Peter Parker after he reveals himself as the hero. Harry comes back to life when the universe is reset in the Marvel Civil War crossover, but now he and Liz are divorced, with Peter Parker's former crush having started her own technologies company. Liz isn't a major part of the Spider-Man storylines, but she is important to Peter as a character. Him getting past his crush shows his growth and how he's gaining more self-confidence. Her hatred of him after Peter defeats the Green Goblin also further establishes how his actions have unintended consequences that can end up harming innocent people. Number 7. CARLIE Cooper. CARLIE Cooper is a forensic specialist who works for the New York City Police Department. The two first cemented their relationship with a kiss when she was dressed as Black Cat at a costume party. As their relationship grew more serious, things between them would become more strained and uncomfortable, though. CARLIE broke up with Peter after he told her that he was Spider-Man. She felt that his responsibilities as a hero would prevent him from giving their relationship the time and dedication it needed. However, she still aided Peter with his work as a hero and stayed on good terms with him after the breakup. That is, until Doc Ock took over Peter Parker's body and became the new Spider-Man. She was the only person who knew about Dr. Octavius and Peter switching minds and began hunting for proof of the event. This, however, led her to being brainwashed by the Goblin Army and transformed into the villain known as Monster. Even if she was turned back to normal in the end, the trauma forced her to leave New York for a time and get her life in order. CARLIE is a great example of what can happen to characters when they become entangled in the complex web that is Peter Parker's life. It's not surprising that he keeps his alter ego a secret and is distant to most people when just being around him can cause them so much harm. Number 6. Betty Brant. Betty Brant is one of Peter Parker's few romantic interests that's had as crummy of a life as he has. She dropped out of high school to work as a secretary for the Daily Bugle to pay for her brother's gambling debts and care for her ailing mother. Initially, she and Peter Parker find comfort in each other as they share lives on the edge of poverty. But then she blames Spider-Man for her brother's passing during an attack by Doc Ock, not knowing about Peter's secret identity. Betty also struggled heavily through her strained marriage to Ned Leeds and his untimely passing. Through it all though, Peter is a good friend to her, and romantic feelings blossom between the two often, even if they can't act on them much. Betty reciprocates all the help Peter gives her and helps boost his confidence when she's able to. After learning that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, she helps Peter figure out his priorities and values. She assures him that Spider-Man doesn't make Peter Parker special. It's Peter's own values that make Spider-Man such an incredible hero, which is a lesson that Peter does his best to take to heart. Number 5. Kitty Pryde. In the Ultimate Marvel Comics run, Peter Parker and Kitty Pryde of the X-Men date for a while. As they're both teenagers, Spider-Man and Shadowcat spend most of their time together hanging out, going to malls, and fighting crime. This last part of their relationship ends up being its undoing though, and the two break up when they realize they're too busy to stay together. This relationship is really interesting because it digs into the social lives of superheroes. Most comic series separate the lives of their heroes between their everyday life and their heroic activities. We don't often get peeks into the social lives in these communities of heroes. The relationship between most superheroes is defined by their shared desire to protect innocent people, and conflict stems from different expressions of that desire clashing. But these superheroes spend enough time together that there has to be some kind of social dynamic between them. It's fun to imagine some heroes getting along simply because they share hobbies, and others disliking each other because of some petty disagreement. Kitty and Peter's relationship is great because it explores the rarely seen social world of superheroes. Number 4. Cindy Moon. In the 2014 reboot of the Amazing Spider-Man comic book franchise, we learn in the first issue that the spider that gave Peter his powers bit another student, Cindy Moon. This transformed her into the superhero Silk, who has many of the same powers as Peter, including the ability to naturally create spiderwebs. Gaining these powers also placed her in possession of a spider totem, which connects Cindy to a multiverse and makes her a major player in a lot of the Spider-Verse elements. Even if it isn't at the center of their relationship, the sparks of romance between the Peter Parker and Cindy Moon of Earth 616 are pretty enticing. Cindy is so high on this list mostly because of how interesting of a character she is outside of her relationship with Peter Parker. Different interpretations on Spider-Man are always a treat, and Cindy is no exception. Then again, the compulsion that both Cindy and Peter have to be intimate when near each other thanks to their powers does add an interesting wrinkle to their relationship. Number 3. Black Cat. Black Cat, also known as Felicia Hardy, is one of Spider-Man's more interesting love interests. She's an anti-hero and thief who's more interested in improving her own life than helping those around her, although she does frequently work with Spider-Man when the two are working towards a shared goal. What's unique about Black Cat and Spider-Man's relationship is that she's only attracted to the hero Spider-Man and cares very little about his life as Peter Parker. This plays right into one of Peter's biggest struggles as a character, in that his life as Spider-Man is so much better than his life as Peter Parker. While they're dating, Peter is tempted more than ever to try to be Spider-Man all the time. After all, as Spider-Man, he's a hero loved by millions, including his awesome girlfriend. But as Peter Parker, he can barely afford rent and keep a steady job. While the two do break up eventually, there's always a romantic undertone to their relationship. Black Cat has come to symbolize the temptation Spider-Man feels to leave his life as Peter Parker behind. She's one of Spider-Man's best girlfriends because she cuts right to the most compelling part of Peter Parker's character. Number 2. Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy was originally introduced as a romantic interest for Peter Parker, but has since evolved into a deeply complex character. Her unexpected passing during a battle with Green Goblin is one of the most shocking moments in the history of comics. The unexpected loss of the love of his life tore Peter apart and had substantial repercussions on the main cast of characters. Bizarrely though, Gwen is no longer most remembered for her untimely passing, or the many times she was brought back to life through cloning or another means. Instead, she's most well known as the main character in a number of successful spin-off series. Her Spider-Gwen series was so popular that a version of the character appeared in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. Moreover, the Gwenpool comic series is a fourth-wall-breaking riot. Gwen managed to go from a character that just existed to further Peter's growth to major character in her own right. She isn't on this list because of her relationship with Peter. She's here because she's a really cool and endearing character that happened to date Spider-Man for a while. She has an expansive comic history outside of her relationship with him, and not many other characters on this list can say that. Number 1. Mary Jane Watson. Of course, Mary Jane Watson is Spider-Man's best girlfriend. The romance that the two share is a major part of their lives and the stories where the two both appear. In the comics, Mary Jane Watson is the first person to discover that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and keeping that secret for him bonds the two. It's not surprising at all that just about every piece of Spider-Man media features Mary Jane and digs into their relationship. She grounds Peter Parker and proves to him that his life has value as an ordinary person. Sure, their relationship has plenty of ups and downs, but the two inspire each other to be the best possible version of themselves. It's okay if you think that their relationship is kind of played out by this point, but that's only because it was one of the biggest romances in comics for so long. Mary Jane is the first character that comes to mind when thinking about Spider-Man's love interests. Now, if she just had a little bit more time to shine outside of her relationship with Peter, she'd easily be one of the most notable characters in the comic book medium. What do you think of our ranking of Spider-Man's girlfriends? Please let us know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to TheBinger. If you want to make sure to catch all of our upcoming videos, click on the bell icon so you can get a notification every time a new video goes live.